afraid of the water. I also wanted to give you a heads up. Smile for the cameras. All of the cameras that you see back there are from some of our local stations that are going to be feeding it to those people that were not able to come and break away from their desks. So they're watching us, so smile. And for those that do not feel comfortable to be captured on video, you would need to exit to the side, because I cannot guarantee that I cannot put you on camera. Thank you so much. With that being said, welcome to the King Center. Today is a very, very special day. My name is Carmen Luisa Coya Vendown. I am the Director of Communications for the King Center. I am humbled and honored to serve you at this event. This is the Martin Luther King Jr. Nonviolent Peace Prize. With that being said, I would like to introduce to you a person that I respect and I honor, and I actually absolutely admire in the industry. Her name is Ms. Teresa Rodriguez. She's a 13-time Emmy Award-winning journalist and co-anchors Univision Primetime. That means that they watch her from Canada all the way down to Chile. So she has a very large audience. And in fact, studies have shown that their audience combined with ABC, CBS, NBC is the size of their one morning show. So that gives you an idea of how many people get to watch them. I admire her so much because she paved the way for so many young ladies like myself when we were going through journalism school, that we did not have to be pigeonholed in one language or another. We can be English and we can do Español. So we don't have to do one or the other. We can be who God wanted us to be, or as Dr. King said, be judged by the content of our character. With that being said, I would like to introduce to you Ms. Teresa Rodriguez, who will be the one serving as our Mistress of Ceremonies for this eventful day.
Thank you, Carmen. I'm so proud of her. So proud of her. Well, good morning. Buenos dias. Thank you, everyone. And it is indeed a pleasure to be here today, marking the beginning of what I know will be not just a memorable day, but an incredible opportunity to meet and listen to a myriad of speakers and professionals from all walks of life with a message of respect for human and civil rights, of nonviolence, tolerance, and dignity. As the first Latina to serve as your MC in a time of so much hate and divisiveness in our country, I am honored, I am humbled to be part of such a milestone, commemorating the legacy of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a visionary who believed in diversity and inclusion. This morning, we will honor a courageous prosecutor for his work during the Nuremberg trials, Mr. Benjamin Ferencz. I met him backstage. He's such a hoot. You're going to love him. And we will recognize Mr. Bryan Stevenson for his fearless advocacy work in the legal field and his historic ruling that reversed life without parole sentences for children 17 years old or younger. Two outstanding men worthy of the Martin Luther King Jr. Nonviolent Peace Prize. But before we get to that, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a very warm welcome as we invite the CEO of this great center, a global thought leader who continues to advance her parents' legacy and who is passionate about the work with youth in education and training based on her father's philosophy and methodology of nonviolence. Without further ado, Dr. Bernice A. King.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you officially to the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change, which is the official living memorial to the life, work, and legacy of my father. And on this, the 50th anniversary of his assassination, before we go any further, I would like for us to take a moment of silence. Amen. Today, we wanted to remember my father as he was. Most people, when they talk about him, characterize him as a civil rights leader, and that he indeed was. Some people talk about him being a great orator. That he was. But today, I wanted to ensure that we remember one of the greatest gifts that he gave to this nation, and as Gandhi himself predicted, an African American would carry, and he didn't use the word African American back then, but would carry nonviolence around the world. We decided to start this day remembering the apostle of nonviolence. And now more than ever before, we need his teachings, his principles, his steps of nonviolence. And we at the King Center are engaged in educating and training individuals in that philosophy and methodology, which we call Nonviolence 365. My father said before his assassination that we still have a choice today: nonviolent coexistence or violent co-annihilation. He also said that it'll be either, it's no longer nonviolence or violence, it's nonviolence or non-existence. And so, in a real respect, going forward, we are going to be forced to embrace nonviolence, not merely as a tactic to be used in a social justice movement, but as a way of life for all people throughout this world. And so today, we are awarding two worthy recipients of the Martin Luther King Jr. Nonviolent Peace Prize. This prize is given by the Center in honor of the greatest apostle of nonviolence. It is an international award. It was instituted in 1973 and is the highest award which the King Center gives to an individual. As some of you know, every year we award the Salute to Greatness Award, which is the second highest award. But this is the highest award. The prize is awarded for commitment to nonviolence as a way of life through which social justice, human rights, and civil liberties are attained for each individual. The prize also recognizes achievements to the eradication of poverty, racism, and militarism. And so today you may wonder, why are we awarding two attorneys? Well, we have heard the cries in the street, no justice, no peace. Where did that come from? It came from Dr. King's words: true peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice. And so we cannot have peace in this world unless we establish justice. And our two honorees today wholeheartedly represent that. And we are delighted to have them with us, for them to receive this, the highest award given by the King Center. So thank you for being here. And we look forward, for those of you who can stay with us, joining us at the lunch, where they will, you will have an opportunity to dialogue with them in a conversation that will be moderated by Monica Kaufman. God bless you.
Thank you, Dr. King, and thank you for reminding us of your father's words of wisdom. Now, it is my pleasure at this time to welcome to the stage Senior Policy Advisor on Human Rights and Special Representative on Women and Girls with the Carter Center, Karen Ryan. She's not only worked with former President Jimmy Carter and his wife Rosalind, but she represents the Carter Center on a variety of issues, including assisting victims of human rights violations through personal interventions with heads of state, to recently helping establish a UN Human Rights Council. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Karen Ryan.
Good morning. If anyone heard Reverend Bernice King last night in Memphis, maybe you're still floating on the beautiful but also challenging words that she gave to us. She speaks about her father's admonition that we must review and recommit to abolishing racism, poverty, and militarism. And these are interconnected. And today's honorees point us in this direction. Without the resources that are siphoned off of our national budget for social uplift, we have a lack of education, we have lack of investment in our communities. But also, the part that we never talk about is the destruction in Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Africa, throughout Africa. American Special Forces are deployed in 138 countries today for training and for kill and capture operations. This is the face of militarism that we must not leave out of this conversation. And Dr. King, 50 years ago, explained this to us in his speech on Vietnam, which I hope everyone will study. These triple evils of poverty, racism, and militarism have us, the American people, trapped in a cycle of violence. And our honorees today are an example of what we, each of us, must consider to be our duty, whether we are attorneys, whether we are social workers, whether we are school teachers, whether we are lawmakers, or whether we are students protesting gun violence. This is a charge for all of us. The Carter Center is honored to be included in today's program because former President Jimmy Carter and Rosalind Carter have been part of the movement since, actually, he was governor of the state of Georgia, encountering and challenging racism and extreme poverty and mass incarceration, and then during the White House, putting human rights and peace at the center of his foreign policy. President Carter faced great pressures to wage war against Iran after the hostage crisis, but he said, no, we're going to negotiate. Recently, President Carter, that shows my age, in 1994, actually went to North Korea and came up with an agreement with the North Korean leaders to avoid nuclear proliferation. This commitment to nonviolence continues at the Carter Center today. We have worked side by side with B Firenze and others to establish the International Criminal Court. Why? Because there is no peace without justice. Because war itself is a crime. We worked side by side with others, with Bryan Stevenson and others, to end the death penalty in this country, because we know this is the intersection of racism, poverty, and a form of militarism that has created mass incarceration and disproportionate effect of the death penalty on African Americans. So today, as we hear the inspiring stories, let us not forget, as Reverend Dr. King, Bernice King, told us last night, that for America, it is our time of repentance and healing. But we cannot heal until we remember the sins of our creation, the sins of how this nation was built. And I have a special appreciation for Bryan Stevenson's effort to build the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, commemorating the victims of lynchings in the South. We must all support this initiative. We must go and visit, and we must repair the harm to our nation. Until this, we will never have peace. America will never be as great as it could be, but we can be, and it's up to all of us. And remember that the heroes of human rights and peace, like Bryan Stevenson and B Firenze, are in every community. There are many of you here who are working and toiling without recognition. This is your day too. Stand up. Stand with the Black Lives Matter movement that needs to be supported. Stand up with the Parkland students that have legislative solutions to the gun problem. Stand up when our senators oppose the war in Yemen that is being supported by American support for Saudi Arabia, or military assistance to Nigeria that is being used to cause human rights violations there and throughout the continent of Africa. Stand up. Educate ourselves. Let us abolish the death penalty in this country. Let us end mass incarceration. Let us do all of the things that we must do, we in America can only do, to live up to the challenge of Dr. Martin Luther King that he gave us 50 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan, for your powerful words and your outstanding work in this field. And now a woman whose angelic voice and talent is no stranger to the King family. She's known nationally and internationally for her opera gospel renditions of music, and her versatility and range are beyond compare. You'll hear in just a minute, you'll see what I mean. We are indeed blessed today to witness firsthand the magical gift of Miriam Ferencz and her rendition of From a Distance.
Distance, the world looks blue and green, and the snow-capped mountains white. From a distance, the ocean meets the stream, and the eagle takes to flight. From a distance, harmony, and it echoes through the land. It's the voice of hope, it's the voice of peace, it's the voice of every man. From a distance, we all have enough, and no one is in need. There are no guns, no bombs, and no disease, no hungry mouths to feed. From a distance, we are instruments marching in a common band, playing songs of hope, playing songs of peace. They're the songs of every man. God is watching us. God is watching us. God is watching us from a distance. Distance, you look like my friend, even though we are at war. From a distance, I just can't comprehend what all this fighting's for. From a distance, harmony, and it echoes through the land. It's the love of loves. It's the heart of every man. God is watching us. God is watching us. God is watching us from a distance. God is watching us. God is watching us. God is watching us from a distance.
Beautiful indeed. Thank you, Miriam. Her voice can definitely move mountains, and when she sings, I just get goosebumps. Your soul transforms itself, so thank you again. Our next guest is the Emeritus Director of the Weinberg Center for Holocaust Education at the Bremen Jewish Heritage Museum. She's described by many as a very special woman who has given her heart and soul to teaching about the Holocaust in ways people will always remember, and making sure that another Holocaust never happens again. The museum is a testament to Jewish culture and history. And Dr. Lillian Kaczynski-Baxter, or Lily, as she prefers to be called, is a glowing example of how one can remain vigilant in order to protect our freedom while also respect the religion, the customs, and the traditions of others. I am honored to introduce to you Dr. Lily Kaczynski-Baxter. Technical stuff, but we're going to do what we're going to do. It's live. It's okay to say. No problem. Okay. I'd like to begin by...
This was the tragic fulfillment of a program of intolerance and arrogance. Vengeance is not our goal, nor do we seek merely a just retribution. We ask this court to affirm by international penal action man's right to live in peace and dignity, regardless of his race or creed. The case we present is a plea of humanity to law. We shall establish, beyond the realm of doubt, facts which, before the dark decade of the Third Reich, would have seemed incredible. Courts will show that the slaughter committed by these defendants was dictated not by military necessity, but by that supreme perversion of thought, the Nazi theory of the master race. We shall show that these deeds of men in uniform were the methodical execution of long-range plans to destroy ethnic, national, political, and religious groups which stood condemned in the Nazi mind. Genocide, the extermination of whole categories of human beings, was a foremost instrument of the Nazi doctrine.
Benjamin Ferencz. I'd like to begin by thanking Dr. Bernice King for inviting me to give this tribute to a modern visionary who has seen the worst and yet has lived a lifetime of optimism, who has, despite setbacks, never given up on the possibility for lawful justice and world peace, who is enormously erudite, brazenly unafraid, and boldly provocative.
If anyone merits receiving the Martin Luther King Jr. Nonviolent Peace Prize, it is Benjamin B. Ferencz. Born in Romania in 1920, Ferencz emigrated with his family to the United States when he was just 10 months old. He grew up in New York City's Hell's Kitchen, attended City College of New York, and then Harvard Law School on a scholarship. He joined the Army in 1943 and fought in every campaign in Europe. As Nazi atrocities were uncovered, he was assigned to a team tasked with collecting the evidence. To this day, he is still tormented by what he saw in Buchenwald, Mauthausen, and Dachau. No sooner had he been honorably discharged, but Ferencz was recruited to become the chief prosecutor for the U.S. Army at the Einsatzgruppen trial in Nuremberg, Germany. The Einsatzgruppen were the SS murder squads that followed the German army and killed without pity over 1 million Jewish men, women, and children. Some of my own family was murdered that way. The Associated Press called it the biggest murder trial in history. 22 defendants were charged and all were convicted. He was only 27 years old, and this was his first case. After the trials, Ferencz stayed in Germany and participated in the creation of reparation and compensation programs for the victims of Nazi persecution. Those interested in today's growing reparations movement might want to study this important aspect of Ferencz's work. Ferencz had been a witness not only to Nazi war crimes, but also war crimes by American soldiers. Those experiences led him to the realization that all people, including himself, are capable of great evil as well as great good. Thus, in 1970, in response to the devastation created by the Vietnam War, Ferencz left private practice to devote the next decades of his life promoting world peace through his writings and talks. Under the banner, "Law, not war, can save the world," he has worked tirelessly for the institution of an international criminal court. We have Benjamin Ferencz to thank for the International Criminal Court finally established in 2002. The author of 8 books and hundreds of articles and reviews, Ferencz is adjunct professor of international law at Pace University and founder of the Pace Peace Center. Along with his wife and son, he founded the Planethood Foundation, whose aim is to educate on the need for replacing the law of force with the force of law. Mr. Ferencz has received many honors for his work, including the French Legion of Honor and Holland's Erasmus Prize. In October 2012, he returned to Germany to be the first honorary Nuremberg lecturer for peace and justice. And just a year ago, in April 2017, The Hague named the footpath next to the Peace Palace the Benjamin Ferencz path. Let us all walk in his footsteps. Today, another honor, the Martin Luther King Jr. Peace Prize. Like Dr. King, Benjamin Ferencz is a man of great vision, but personal modesty. A man who is passionately committed to a world house where all live in freedom, dignity, and peace. A man willing to hold the U.S. to account when necessary, but also a great patriot. Someone who has come face to face with humanity's deepest flaws, and yet has retained the capacity to imagine a better future for us all. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in honoring Mr. Benjamin B. Ferencz.
And as the CEO of the King Center, I am honored to present the Martin Luther King Jr. Peace Prize to Attorney Benjamin Ferencz, who turned 99 this month.
Let's get a picture.
Thank you all very much, particularly for Martin King's daughter and all the others who are inviting me to come here. I understand you've seen, oh yes, a picture of me. I was 27 years old then. You'll notice I haven't changed a bit. Although I'm in my 99th year now. To impress some of you with my great accomplishments, I want to confess that this morning I skipped some of my morning exercises, which includes 115 push-ups. Now, it's a great honor to receive the King Award, because I was a great admirer of his. Another one which I was very pleased to receive was from the Harvard Law School, their Medal of Freedom. And the reason I was particularly pleased was because the one who had gotten it before me was Nelson Mandela. And he had spent 20 years in solitary confinement before he got his country to recognize that being black doesn't make them inferior to anybody else. So I have had that tradition. Has been indicated from that very comprehensive report of my life, which I was interested in hearing. I was raised in poverty. My parents, like many people today, were refugees, fleeing persecution and poverty. Came to the United States, no language, no money, no friends, no skills. My earliest days are, my father was accepted a job as a janitor in an area of New York known as Hell's Kitchen. And that's where I spent my earliest years. And I had made up my mind that I was going to spend the rest of my life trying to prevent crime, because I had seen crime all around me. And in pursuit of that career, it's been mentioned, eventually I applied to the Harvard Law School. They gave me an exam, and they gave me a scholarship for my exam on criminal law. So I was ordained at that stage to follow a career which would support the rule of law as a method of deterring existing crimes. It's been mentioned that I was a combat soldier in World War II. The Army, of course, really recognized my talent. I was a graduate of the Harvard Law School. I had done research for a Harvard professor who wrote a book on war crimes. And so the Army made me a private in the artillery. And it was in that capacity that I landed on the beaches of Normandy, and all of the subsequent battles of the war. I crossed the Rhine River, driving a jeep on a pontoon bridge, hoping we didn't end up in the water. So I've seen the horrors of war as a combat soldier, and as the war was coming to its close, we received reports of concentration camps being liberated or overrun by the American General Patton's forces. We didn't know the word concentration camp. All we knew was that there were people who looked like they were starving, and they seemed to be coming out of some kind of a work camp. Well, the conditions in the camp has been adequately described or inadequately described by the historical events since then. My archives, 2 truckloads, have been given to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, If you ever have a chance and you haven't already done so, it's worth a trip. But what I saw personally was the horror of coming into a camp where the people have been starved to death and worked to death as part of a program of trying to kill them all. That was the program. If they couldn't work, they were sent directly to a gas chamber. If they could work, you waited until they slowed down, and then you sent them to a gas chamber. And these were the remnants. The crematoria was still going. Diseases everywhere, dysentery, cholera, diarrhea, rats running over the place, human beings groveling in mounds of garbage for a morsel of bread of some kind to save them. I also saw the effects of war when Allied flyers were shot down, sometimes by my outfit, 115th AAA Gun Battalion, and I had to dig up the bodies and try to locate the persons responsible and notify the next of kin. I've done that. So it led me to the conclusion, and I'll jump to the conclusion right now. It's been said by others more eloquent than me that war is hell. President Eisenhower warned the world in one of his final speeches as president, the world can no longer rely on force. If civilization is to survive, it must turn to the rule of law. And so I have been writing books on it, going to meetings, organizing various groups. And the conclusion is that we cannot even begin to organize against the folly of war until we change the hearts and minds of the people who have glorified war for centuries. And there, I have been working closely with the Divinity School, the Harvard Divinity School, and we've had to work at it at all levels, at the kindergarten level. And it's gotten to be so imperative now that many of you, there are not too many young people here. Of course, everybody compared to me is young. But our situation now is, if the two heads of state are unable to agree, they send their young people out to kill other young people, like some of you in the audience, or your children, or your grandchildren, to kill other young people. And when they get tired of killing each other, they rest, they declare victory, and they start all over again. In the meanwhile, we're in the middle of an arms race, trying to outgun every other nation on the planet. And we can do it through cyberspace. But there's an arms race in cyberspace. Billions of dollars spent to kill more people. If the money had been spent for helping the people, it would have been a more peaceful world. And the teachings of Martin Luther King, I have also seen the mountaintop. And the mountaintop is a top where people will use their common sense and recognize that law is always better than war. And that has been my slogan. That is my slogan, will remain my slogan. And the people say, how do you do it? And I give you 3 pieces of advice. 1, never give up. 2, never give up. 3, you heard it. And so did Martin Luther King. Thank you very much.
I think they're going to... 99 years young. Wow, amazing, amazing. Congratulations and thank you again, Benjamin Ferencz. Wow. And now we have a very special guest, Master Jahi Williams from the Ebenezer Baptist Church. He's a 6th grader at Henderson Middle School, extremely talented, and he will be singing We Are the World, accompanied by Miss Paula Thompson on keyboard. Ladies and gentlemen. Hold on a minute.
There comes a time when we heed a certain call, when the world must come together as one. There are people dying, and it's time to lend a hand to life, the greatest gift of all. We can go on pretending day by day that someone somewhere will soon make a change. We are all a part of God's great big family, and the truth, you know, love is all we need. We are the world, we are the children, we are the ones who make a brighter day, so let's start giving. There's a choice we're making, we're saving our own lives. It's true, we make a brighter day, just you and me. Send them your hearts, so they know that someone cares, and their lives will be stronger and free. As God has shown us, by turning stone to bread, and so we all must lend a helping hand. We are the world, we are the children, we are the ones who make a brighter day, so let's start giving. There's a choice we're making, we're saving our own lives. It's true, we make a better day, just you and me. When you're down and out, there seems no hope at all. But if you just believe, there's no way we can fall. Well, let us realize that a change will only come. And so we all must stand together as one. We are the world. Come on! We are the children. I can't hear you. Let's go. There's a choice we're making, we're saving our own lives. It's true, we make a better day, just you and me. I need more energy over the world. We are the children, we are the ones who make a brighter day, so let's start giving. I can't hear you. The choice we're making, it's true, we make a brighter day, just you and me. We are the world, we are the children, we are the ones who make a brighter day, so let's start giving. There's a choice we're making, we're saving our own lives. It's true, we make a brighter day, just you and me. It's true, we make a brighter day, just you and me. It's true, we make a brighter day, just you and me.
Give it up. Jahi Williams. He's got it. Hey, take a bow, your audience. There you go. He's got quite a future. Very talented young man. Thank you so much. Thank you. Wow. That got us all up and awake, right? Let me put this in there. I'll give you a couple of seconds to take your seats. Come on in. I'd also like to thank Paula Thompson on keyboard. Okay. Some members of the King family entering the room. Thank you. And good morning to all. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Benjamin Crump, a civil rights attorney from my home state of Florida, who became internationally known for his association with the George Zimmerman case and for representing the family of Michael Brown, a 17-year-old African-American man shot and killed by the authorities in Ferguson, Missouri. He's also a Florida State alum, so I'm kind of biased. Please welcome to the stage Mr. Benjamin Crump.
To Dr. Bernice King, her entire family, and in memory of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., it is my esteemed honor to introduce my friend, Bryan Stevenson. Bryan is the executive director of the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama. He is passionate and tireless as an advocate. He's fighting for poverty. He's fighting poverty and racial discrimination in the criminal justice system to give hope to those who Jesus considered the least of these. Bryan, who shines like a beacon in the dark, has appropriately received numerous awards and accolades for doing what I refer to as God's work. What follows is a truncated list of his accomplishments. Bryan was awarded the MacArthur Foundation Genius Award, the National Medal of Liberty from the American Civil Liberties Union after he was nominated by United States Supreme Court Justice John Stevens, the Public Interest Lawyer of the Year by the National Association of Public Interest Lawyers, and the Olof Palme Prize in Stockholm, Sweden for international human rights. He received the NAACP William Robert Ming Advocacy Award, the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute Fred L. Shuttlesworth Award, and the Smithsonian Magazine American Ingenuity Award in Social Progress. Mr. Stevenson was inducted into the American Academy of Arts and Science in 2014 and won the Lannan Foundation Prize for Human and Civil Rights. This outstanding gentleman before us today has received 29 honorary doctoral degrees. And yes, 29. And he authored the critically acclaimed New York Times bestseller, Just Mercy. Which was named by Time magazine as one of the 10 best books of nonfiction for 2014 and has been awarded several honors, including the Carnegie Medal by the American Library Association for the best nonfiction book of 2014, and he received a 2015 NAACP Image Award. Now, brothers and sisters, I have to tell you all, I had an opportunity to see a real-life example of just mercy. I was speaking at the Jewish Community Center in Boston, Massachusetts, and one of the honorees was Mr. Anthony Rea Hinton. Yes, Anthony Rea Hinton, for those of you who do not know him, is a 6'6" prince of a human being who had been defined as a beast and condemned to death. He spent 30 years incarcerated, half of them on death row, for a crime he did not commit. He told the audience in Boston that night the only reason that he is living today is because of Bryan Stevenson and the Equal Justice Initiative. And what is more amazing about Mr. Hinton is his mentality. And I believe this is because he gleaned our honoree Bryan Stevenson and his mentality and his attitude on life. Because you would think that he would be bitter in that little box all those years, on death row all those years. But he said hate is what had him falsely incarcerated. It was love that freed him. So he chooses to follow love. And so it is in the true spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., it is with great pride and deep gratitude, profound love and respect that after this video, I would introduce to you all my friend and fellow warrior in the courtroom and out the courtroom in the fight for justice, Mr. Bryan Stevenson.
It's a great question to think about how you create great change and what's the mechanism and strategy for that. Obviously, courts, by their very nature, are incremental. It takes a long time. But they have also established a history in our country of being capable of moving things forward that don't move forward in the political system, that don't move forward in other areas of public administration. And so in that respect, I'm not unhappy that we can present something to the Supreme Court or to a court to advance an issue. I'm a product of Brown versus Board of Education. My father grew up in a county where there were no black high schools. The county I grew up in had no black high schools when my dad went to school, and segregation was the dominant reality. I started my education in a colored school, and it was the Supreme Court in Brown that made it possible for lawyers to come in and implement that decision and allow me to go to school. If you'd ever taken a poll of whether the school should be integrated, you would not have gotten majority support for integration in my county. And I doubt that I would have had that opportunity. So sometimes courts have to push society to do things that are fair and equal and just, even when the political space, the majoritarian politics, won't achieve that. And I think in the area of punishment, we're going to see that. And that's why our work in the courts is really, really important. But I'm also persuaded that we have a lot to do to get people outside the court to respect this effort, to embrace this effort. On issues like the death penalty, we are talking a lot more broadly about why the death penalty is unfair. We want people, not just judges and lawyers, to know about this high rate of error. We want people to understand the ways in which poverty undermines your ability to get a just outcome. And the people in my community say capital punishment means them without the capital get the punishment. And that's an issue for a wide cross-section of our society. And so we are pushing in that sphere as well. Actually, in California in 2012, there was an effort to end the death penalty through a public referendum that almost succeeded. And so I think those kinds of efforts will be important moving forward. I'm writing this book in part because I want to talk to an audience that's not judges and lawyers about a range of issues that I think are important. But I don't really make any apologies about expecting our courts to sometimes do what our political system doesn't do, to demand fairness and equality even when we don't have the political power or the resources to ensure equality and fairness in the political process, in the legislative process. And what I'm most proud of as a lawyer is when systems of justice stand up for the rights of disfavored people, when they protect the marginalized, when they shield people from the animosity of the masses, because it would be unconstitutional to allow that minority to be exploited and victimized and abused. That's when the rule of law really strengthens itself, and when the integrity of a judicial system can best be evaluated.
Please join me in welcoming Attorney Bryan Stevenson.
And as the CEO of the King Center, I'm honored to present this Martin Luther King Jr. Nonviolent Peace Prize to Attorney Bryan Stevenson of the Equal Justice Initiative.
I am just so honored and so thrilled to be here. I want to thank Dr. Bernice King for giving me this great, great honor. I can't think of anything that means more to me than to be in this space. I want to thank my friend, the champion lawyer, Ben Crump, for introducing me so passionately and thoughtfully. And I want to thank all of you for sharing in this moment. I've spent my career fighting for people who have been incarcerated, fighting for people who have been wrongly convicted, fighting for people who've been unfairly sentenced. I'm worried about what's happening in this country. We have the highest rate of incarceration in the world. We have 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's imprisoned. We have 6 million people on probation or parole. There are 70 million Americans with criminal arrests, which means that when they try to get jobs and they try to get loans, they are disfavored. We've done terrible things to women in the last quarter century. The percentage of women going to jails and prisons has increased 646%. In the last 25 years, 70% of the women that we send to jails and prisons are single parents with minor children, which means the lives of these children are disrupted. We've built these pipelines from schoolhouses to jailhouses. The Bureau of Justice predicts that 1 in 3 black male babies born in this country today is expected to go to jail or prison during his lifetime. That wasn't true when Dr. King was alive. And so for me, it is urgent, it is necessary that we continue to fight, that we continue to struggle, that we continue to march, that we continue to demand justice for those who are being treated unfairly. But what I'm excited about this morning is that I am standing in a place that when I was a young lawyer, I used to come all the time for inspiration, for encouragement, because that's what Dr. King has given me. It's what he's given all of us. He's taught me that we have to stay hopeful even in the face of these difficulties. We've got to stay hopeful because I believe that hopelessness is the enemy of justice. That's what Dr. King taught us. He taught us that injustice prevails where hopelessness persists. And because we understand that, because I understand it, because of his witness, because of his life, I've learned that there are things that I have to do that I wouldn't have thought I had to do before. But I've learned that sometimes I'm going to have to stand even when other people say sit down. I've learned that I've learned that sometimes I'm going to have to speak even when other people say be quiet. And because he taught us that sometimes that righteous willingness to speak and to stand is critical to how we create justice, I can't tell you how meaningful it is to receive an award with his name. I go places sometimes and I meet extraordinary people. I was in a church some years ago. I spend time in the Black Belt, the poor regions of the Deep South, and I was in a church giving a talk. And an older black man came into the church. He was in a wheelchair. And he was in the back of the church, and he was staring at me the whole time I was speaking. And he had this stern, almost angry look on his face. I couldn't figure out why is he looking at me so sternly. And I got through my talk, and people were very nice, and they were very appropriate. They came up to me. But this older black man kept sitting in the back, staring at me from his wheelchair. And when everybody else left, this older man wheeled himself to the front of the church. He came down the center aisle. And he had that stern, angry look on his face. And when he got in front of me, he put his hand up. He said, "Do you know what you're doing?" And I just stood there. And then the man asked me again. He said, "Do you know what you're doing?" And I stepped back and I mumbled something. And then he asked me one last time. He said, "Do you know what you're doing?" And then this man looked at me and he said, "I'm going to tell you what you're doing." And this man looked at me and he said, "You're beating the drum for justice. You keep beating the drum for justice." And I was so moved, but I was also really relieved because I just didn't know. And then this man grabbed me by my jacket and he pulled me into his wheelchair. He said, "Come here, come here, come here. I'm going to show you something." And this man turned his head. He said, "You see this scar I have behind my right ear?" He said, "I got that scar in Greene County, Alabama, in 1963, trying to register people to vote." He turned his head. He said, "You see this cut I have down here at the bottom of my neck?" He said, "I got that cut in Philadelphia, Mississippi, in 1964, trying to register people to vote." He turned his head. He said, "You see this dark spot?" He said, "That's my bruise. Got my bruise in Birmingham, Alabama, 1965, trying to register people to vote." Then he looked at me and said, "I'm going to tell you something, young man." He said, "People look at me. They think I'm some old man sitting in a wheelchair covered with cuts and bruises and scars." He said, "But I'm going to tell you something. He said, I'm going to tell you that these are not my cuts. I want you to know that these are not my scars." He said, "These are not my bruises." He said, "These are my medals of honor." And I believe that we have to keep fighting. We have to keep struggling. I am persuaded that each of us is more than the worst thing we've ever done. I don't believe if someone tells a lie, they're just a liar. I don't believe if someone takes something that doesn't belong to them, they're just a thief. I think even if you kill someone, you're not just a killer. And because of that, I want to keep fighting to end the death penalty. I want to keep fighting over incarceration. I don't believe in this country that the opposite of poverty is wealth. I think we talk too much about money in America. I don't believe that the opposite of poverty is wealth. I believe that the opposite of poverty is justice. And when we do justice, we deconstruct the conditions that give rise to poverty. We have this history of racial inequality, and we've done some terrible things. I don't believe we're free yet. We're in this precious, sacred place, but we're not yet free. There's a history of racial inequality that's created a kind of smog in the air. And it's everywhere. It keeps us from enjoying the things, you know, and we haven't talked about this legacy, this narrative of racial difference that we've inherited. And I hear people talking about slavery. I don't think the great evil of American slavery was involuntary servitude or forced labor. I really believe that the true evil of American slavery was this narrative of racial difference we created. We said that black people aren't the same as white people. They can't do this, they can't do that. They're not as good as white people. And that narrative persisted. And this ideology of white supremacy was created. And if you read the 13th Amendment, it talks about ending involuntary servitude and ending forced labor, but it doesn't say anything about ending this narrative of racial difference. And because of that, I don't think slavery ended. I think it just evolved. It turned into decades of terrorism. We live in the state in Georgia. Those of you who are here, in the state was a lynching state. Thousands of black people were pulled out of their homes. They were burned. They were drowned. They were mutilated. And we haven't talked about that history. The demographic geography of America was shaped by lynching. The black people in Cleveland and Chicago and Detroit and Los Angeles didn't go there as immigrants looking for new economic opportunities. They went there as refugees and exiles from terror in the American South. And then even when we had the struggle of civil rights, we kept fighting, but that narrative is still here. And today we have to overcome this presumption of dangerousness and guilt. There are black and brown children being menaced and targeted because they're presumed dangerous and guilty, and we've got to change that. In South Africa, they won't let you forget about apartheid. There's an apartheid museum. The Constitutional Court is surrounded by the emblems to remind people. In Rwanda, they insist that you hear about the genocide. If you go to Berlin, Germany, you can't go 100 meters without seeing the markers and the stones that have been placed near the homes of Jewish families that were abducted during the Holocaust. The Germans want you to go to the Holocaust Memorial and reflect soberly on that. But in this country, we don't talk about slavery. We don't talk about lynching. So we're building a memorial in Montgomery, Alabama. I invite all of you to be with us in 3 weeks when we open the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. We want to create a place where we can begin to talk honestly about this history. We're building a museum called From Enslavement to Mass Incarceration. And my vow to you today as I accept this award is that we're going to keep fighting to lift up truth in this country. We're going to keep fighting for the poor. We're going to keep fighting for the condemned. We're going to keep fighting for the incarcerated. And my other vow is to let you know that I've been taught by Dr. King that as we fight, that we've got to recognize this line. You see, there's a line sometimes that we cross when we're fighting for justice. We've got to be mindful of that line. And you see, on one side of that line, there is hatred and violence. There is disruption and fear. But on the other side of that line is love. And what Dr. King taught us is that as we fight for equality, as we fight for justice, we've got to stay on the side of love. And I accept this word because I want you to know that I want to be one of those people that as we try to end the death penalty, as we try to end mass incarceration, as we try to fight for the poor and the disabled, we're going to fight on the side of love. I'm not going to cross that line and give away my heart. I'm not going to give away the legacy. I'm not going to give away the commitment to nonviolence, because in that commitment there is power. And that power is what's going to ultimately lead us. And so I want to thank you, and I want to thank you, Bernice, for bringing me to this place, because you've given me something precious here. I'm not unscarred. I'm not unbruised. I'm not uncut. There's no way to do justice without having hard and difficult days, and we've got more hard and difficult days today. But today, in this place, I want you to know that you've changed my cuts, my bruises, my scars to a medal of honor, and I am deeply, deeply grateful. Thank you.
Those are some powerful words. Congratulations, Bryan Stevenson, a man who's used love, obviously, his education, his